I'd like to open the meeting to the sharing of testimonies of healing through Christian Science. Jim from Arizona, go ahead.
Recently, I was inspired to do a bit of reading and decided to take up my Eustace book. However, it was not in the usual spot. So instead, I chose Mrs. Wilcox's book. It was late afternoon, so I took the book out to the east-facing patio and spent an hour there in the study of an article by Mrs. Wilcox. Near the close of the session, it occurred to me to look in the lower shelf of the end table by my chair. I have learned that if a message comes to me, I should act upon it. So I immediately went into the house, and what did I find in the lower shelf but the copy of Mr. Eustace's book? It is so important that we follow up on these wonderful thoughts that come to us. Tonight, I am very, very grateful for, just as our Wednesday meeting started, so did a rainstorm here on the parched Kingdom Desert. And it is very much in keeping with the readings tonight. I am most grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy.
At the Bible study this past weekend, the discussion turned to the thought of ideal situations, and it got me thinking back to the years before coming to this church, being at jobs where I enjoyed the work, but I wasn't really appreciated for it. Money was always tight in those days, and I remember telling a friend I just wanted a job that had good, challenging work to do and made it so I didn't have to stress about bills every month. I never really worried about having much more than that. In some ways, that attitude was a blessing, but I see now in other ways it was not good. That is why coming to Plainfield and doing this work has been such a wonderful, life-changing healing. Not only has God granted me so much more than I ever hoped for, He's brought me Christian Science and the support of a practitioner and church members. Because of this science, I'm learning to expect only good, to know that all supply comes from God, and that I have a purpose in His creation. Now I see that God not only created each one of us, but also at the same time He created our perfect place and perfect work, so we would have our true ideal situation available the moment we turn to Him. I'm so grateful that Christian Science, as taught at this church, is showing me the true nature of God's love and mercy. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda from Pennsylvania, go ahead.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for the readings and the music and hymns tonight. I would like to express my gratitude for learning here at Plainfield how to slow down my thinking and actions. All my life I have felt a pressure to push myself in all I did, and I found it hard to quiet racing thoughts. This push even carried over into my practice of Christian Science. I was in a rush to solve everything yesterday. Before coming here, I turned to self-help books, support groups, willpower, and herbal supplements to try to solve this problem. While I changed some behaviors, it did not address the thinking behind this drive. Nothing effectively has kept me still in thought and in deed until I began to practice the correct teachings of Mrs. Eddy taught here in my daily life and working with a practitioner at Plainfield. As I learn more about God here and my identity as His child and acquire new skills, I am slowly releasing unrealistic expectations and false beliefs. I am practicing putting first things first, which always starts with God and keeps God at the center. This helps me stay in the now, have self-discipline, more orderly action, and patience with my progress in learning about God. Our last roundtable, we were reminded that this work requires steadfast persistence to stay on the road, to stay the course, actually, because to know God is the work of eternity. Now, what matters to me more is not the speed of progress, but the direction I am going. Using the Bible and the science and health, working step by step, learning about God, has brought great comfort and a sense of security. I love the poem titled To the Big Children by Mary Baker Eddy, which says, quote, Father, Mother, good, lovingly thee I seek, patient, meek, in the way thou hast, be it slow or fast, up to thee. End quote. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Luba from Ohio, go ahead.
Good evening. We moved into our home in early December this past year, for which I am so grateful. Since February this year, we found that the electric in the home had to be upgraded, or has to be upgraded. There are defects in the furnace that has to be taken care of. The plumbing has to be repaired, and the roof has to be replaced after the recent windstorm. I was feeling overwhelmed by what seemed to come about suddenly, one thing after another. To calm my sense of fear or feeling helpless, I knew I had to turn it all over to God. In the Blue Book, which I just happened to open randomly, I found this passage on page 173. Whenever there seems to be a need or lack in your experience, this simply indicates the scientific fact that this seeming need is already supplied by God's gracious abundance. Then give thanks with your whole heart, because you have learned in Christian Science that God's supply is ever at hand. What a blessing that statement is. And I'm so grateful to my practitioner and to all I'm learning what Christian Science, the Bible study, and the round table, and this evening's meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Chardell from Pennsylvania, go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you for the service and for the beautiful readings this evening. Not many days ago, as I was doing some joint effort proofing for the church magazine called Love is the Liberator, I was in proofing mode, knowing that I would return to all the writings for pure enjoyment as well as study. Still, in that frame of mind, the articles, gems, and illustrations are so spiritual and filled with such love that a feeling of glowing peace and warmth came over me. This Christian Science Church Independent provides healing messages from many sources, and Love is the Liberator is a very profound part of these messages for mankind. God certainly directs all the workings of this magazine, and it is a glorious gift. In her book, Christian Science in Germany, Frances Thurber Seal says, quote, "The Church of Christ Scientist has been my purest concept of home, and I have learned that it is the highest expression of the kingdom of God in human consciousness," unquote. And this is exactly how I feel about the Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, this is Bruce. I'm so thankful for this church. Every time we get together and do things together, there's a lot of good that comes of it. And I just want to share one little experience from our Bible study last Saturday. I got to say, I love these Bible studies. I often wonder, where have I been all my life? I'm learning so many wonderful things about that precious book, the Bible. Well, anyway, there was a thought that was shared that really helped me, and it was to view the past without regrets, to live in the present without envy, and to look towards the future without fear. And I must say that after the Bible study, I just sat there and contemplated that statement for quite some time and found it very helpful to me, especially about looking in the past without regrets, which is something that occasionally I do, sadly, but I know better. But one thing that helped me was, of course, this statement here. And another thing that helped me was a passage that's from one of our hymns in our hymnal, and it says, "All the good the past hath had remains to make our own time glad." So, upon thinking of that, I set myself that if I ever thinking about something in the past and kind of wished it never happened or had never experienced, I ask myself, didn't I get something good from it? Don't look at the negative. If it happened, you can't go back and unchange it, but did I get something good from it, like I learned something, progressed in some way? Then this is progress in the good that remains today, and not only does it remain, it remains to make our own time glad and better and not sad. So, no more regrets. Only progress with God. And I'm thankful for that, and I'm very thankful for the ideas shared in our Bible study. They're just spectacular. Sharon.
Recently in our lessons and at the round table, we've talked about let not the wise man glory in his wisdom. And it reminded me of an experience I had a few years ago. I was driving home on a highway and it was raining and it was beginning to flood. When I got near my house, there was an exit and the thought came, take this exit. And immediately I said, oh no, the next one's closer. Well, when I got to the next one, it was blocked off due to flooding. So I went to the following one, which I knew flooded, but I knew a shortcut before I got to the flooding, and I know how to go. Well, when I got going down the shortcut, a car coming the other way blinked his lights and said, don't go that way. It's all flooded, there's a car stuck in there, turn around and go back. Well, as I was going back, the water was running, it was on an angle, and the water was running down the road. And I was afraid. And that's when I woke up and said, dear God, that was you speaking to me, and I was disobedient. Please help me. Well, there were little back streets that I never knew existed, and through being on my knees and obeying God, I got out safely and got home safely. But it was a good lesson for me that I can do nothing of myself, that I need to listen to God and obey Him. He always has the answer, and it's the still small voice, and not to think I know anything. I am just so grateful for what I'm learning in this church, and for the round tables and the Bible studies, and all the practitioner help. And thank you for the readings.
Thank you. Elsie from Alabama, go ahead.
Thank you. I thank you for the music and for the readings and the testimonies tonight. And I want to express gratitude for this wonderful church. For the first time, and I'm a lifelong Christian Scientist, I actually learned how to use my science in daily life. I found wonderful practitioners. I was given opportunities to serve the church and to work with loving people. I love that we have ongoing teachings in the church because it certainly has helped me to grow. I am so filled with gratitude for all this and so much more. I thank God every day for these gifts and blessings.
Thank you. Carol.
There was a time at my work when there was a lot of overtime, and I was always asked to work on a Wednesday night. And of course, Wednesday night is church night. Well, at first I thought, oh, well, it really is my responsibility. And then spoken with a practitioner. Practitioner said, no, your responsibility is in God. You know where your responsibility is. So, and the practitioner also said that when you have it firmly in your thought where you know you want to be and where you should be, it'll stop happening. So the next time I was asked to work on a Wednesday night, I said, I'm sorry, but I can't work. I have church tonight. And that was the end of it. They didn't ask me to work anymore on a Wednesday night. And just a couple of weeks ago, there was work going on, and one of the people at work said, oh no, I know you have church tonight. No, you go to church. And then he said, you know, I haven't been to church in years. Maybe I ought to start going again. And I thought, well, thank you, Father. Our example of doing right, people notice, and it can bless them too. I am so very grateful to God for this church, and I'm so grateful for the practitioner's help because, wow, it really worked. Thank you.
Thank you. Day from Georgia. Go ahead.
Thank you. During a few recent roundtable services, we've discussed the way in which we strengthen our spiritual sense, so to speak. Through my study of Christian Science, I've learned to do this by first recognizing God, understanding His allness, and acknowledging His presence and power in all things. The most important step for me has been learning to be grateful to God for everything, and then learning to come to Him with anything. With this, my conversation with the Father has gone from being sporadic to becoming consistent, and I am now better able to hear, trust, and obey Him, and it's making all the difference in every aspect of my life. I'm so thankful for all the work that's going on in this church. Thank you so much for tonight's readings, for all the testimonies, and for this meeting. I'm very grateful to be here.
Thank you. Craig.
I'm so glad I'm here, and thanks God and Elizabeth for those great readings. It is so, what's so striking and beautiful and strengthened me is to know how much, as she had read, God loves all. No matter what situation they're in, whether they're down in Egypt or anywhere, He loves them. And no matter what situation you're in, to feel that you are just loved is strengthening, and then it gives you hope and opens the door to direction. It has meant so much to me that if any of us do our best at something, no matter what situation we wind up in, it will work out right, and we will be blessed, and all involved will be blessed. I guess someone to care, maybe this. I have been working and feel like I have plenty of work to do, which seems to be a good thing. But I wasn't having the time to do the reading, additional reading or study of science and health that I wanted to do, or it works. And I saw on the website there were the audio recordings that Florence had, and there are other audio recordings also. But those science and health, and I wanted to start from the basics again. So I started listening to them, and her love for the listener and for the book and Mary Baker Eddy just made me smile, and I could continue the work that I had been given. I don't think without a hiccup or any delay, and I just felt so satisfied to have that, fill that void of dissatisfaction that I had. I thank God for all the ways that this church provides for whatever you need. I thank God for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Heidi from Maryland, go ahead.
I feel very fortunate to have been raised in Christian Science, but it really wasn't until I was introduced to this church that I learned what it really means to be a Christian Scientist, or how to practically use it. A couple of weeks ago, on a Wednesday evening, in fact, I began to cough and choke, and this continued for quite some time. I became breathless, and my eyes were tearing. I knew that this was in opposition to the testimony service to be held that night. It was a form of animal magnetism, just trying to keep me from hearing the good that God had for me. I firmly stated, "God good," each time I coughed, which is an affirmation of the truth that we've been taught to declare if someone sneezes or coughs or anything negative seems to cross our path. The coughing didn't let up, but neither did I. I remembered learning that truth persists, error does not. So I kept on saying, "God good," over and over. And then it suddenly came to me, you're saying it, but do you really believe it? Do you know it? How is God good? And I looked around the room in my apartment at each thing in it. And as my watering eyes fell upon each thing in the room, I thanked God for it. I thought about how each thing benefited me in some way in my daily life. The table and the chairs, my comfortable couch, my nice flat screen TV, my books. I thanked God for their uses and the joy that each thing brought to me. And I thanked God for supplying me with all that I needed so abundantly. As I was doing this exercise, I became aware that the coughing seemed to lessen. I was thanking God for this when I suddenly felt two little furry paws on my lap. My sweet little dog was looking questionably into my face. And I then thanked God for giving me such a dear creature, an expression of his love for me. It was coming through this loyal companion right then. Suddenly, all the coughing left. My breathing returned to normal, as did my eyes, and I felt a peace come over me. In addition, I had plenty of time left to pray for the upcoming service that night. I am so grateful for God's infinite supply, the teaching and healing work of the practitioners, the website with all that it has to offer, the revelation of Mary Baker Eddy, and this, the Plainfield Independent Christian Science Church. Thank you so much for tonight's service.
Thank you. Benjamin.
Thank you. And also thanks to Elizabeth for the inspiring reading tonight. I feel so happy to be here tonight. I'm also most grateful to God for what I'm learning here. Every day, every week, it's an opportunity for me in particular to learn about how God loves us and how He continues to do so. It was His love that brought me here, and He's been God to me. He's been faithful to me in every way. Even though sometimes I fail to acknowledge that. Recently, I've been acknowledging more of that, about how much God been so faithful to me. It was actually my own unfaithfulness that is my problem, not God. He is God, and He will forever be God. And my understanding of that has been a good help to me. It had helped me to go through my difficult time, because ever we try to make us believe that there are things that God cannot do. But in truth, there's nothing God cannot do. The more we realize that, the more we begin to actualize them in our experience. And that has been my experience recently. God has been able to free me and help me to overcome this burden of self-condemnation and that. And quite frankly, I have had a greater sense of freedom since this understanding has become evident in me. And I will continue to do so because it is helping me a lot. Today, I got another message as I was driving my vehicle. I got a message from my favorite station, and the message was, where sin seemed great, His love is greater. And I thought about that. I felt like the person who was singing that music was speaking to me. It was a message from God to me to know no matter what the problem is, no matter what the mistakes are, no matter what the sin may be, no matter how great it seems to be, the truth of all of that is that God's love for me is greater than all of them. And I took it to heart because it was God speaking to me. It has been my experience. And I'm so grateful to God for His love. It doesn't matter what the mistakes we made, it doesn't matter how big a problem seems to be. If we can realize that God's love is greater than all of that, that alone is a victory for us. I'm so grateful to God for all that I'm learning here every day, every week. And the opportunity that God has given me here to serve Him, to be the best I can be for Him, and all that He has planned for me in the future. And I will embrace them with all my heart. I feel so lucky to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Florence from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the readings tonight about conviction, and also all the testimonies so far, the music, and the whole service. Tonight I'd like to share what I have learned through Christian Science, that as long as I believe in evil as being real at all, then I will always have some claim to challenge my trust in God. I have learned that it is the acknowledgement of God's allness as the only reality that is important. It's very helpful. Part of evil's argument that I learned to dismiss is the ones that said, I have a certain habit and that I've had it so long and I have to really fight to get rid of it. I didn't understand then that when that error was uncovered, I was really admitting it as part of me and then trying to get rid of it by fighting it with some truth. Then I learned that Mrs. Eddy does say that when error is uncovered, we have to see its unreality, that it couldn't be part of what God has created. And seeing it that way helps us to get rid of it by realizing the truth about ourselves. This is what I did. One of the habits that always argued was that I was a procrastinator. And every time I would procrastinate, I would chastise myself, get all angry. I should get rid of this. This is how I've been. Not knowing that I was starting on the wrong foot or the wrong standpoint if I thought that way. So it was wonderful to replace all this by knowing that because God governs me, I am able to do what I need to do on time and whenever it's needed. And of course, learning also that God governs me all day long, that His laws of right activity, harmony, and love govern me. He is active in all my actions. These have helped me a lot. Staying with that thinking has made evil's arguments clearly nothing, and God's allness more clear, and therefore my dominion from Him over evil has gained a much, much more deeper conviction. I am so grateful to learn this in Christian Science, because otherwise I would always claim something bad for myself and then try to heal it. That's not Christian Science. I'm so grateful for everything that I'm learning. Is just making life a whole lot different. Thank you for all the contributions tonight, and thank you for the whole service again. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary.
One of the lessons that many of us are learning, I'm so grateful to be learning it, is to keep my listening ear open to what God is telling me every minute of every day, in all the little things as well as the big things. Last week, I had an appointment that was scheduled quite a while ago to meet with somebody in New York City last Wednesday. Prospective client who was visiting from Europe. And I go into New York every once in a while, and it's quite a challenge from out here to get into New York City. Well, the day before this was supposed to happen, we had 18 hours of snow in New Jersey and New York and most of the Northeast United States. And by the time the snow stopped, which was very late on Tuesday, we had anywhere from 1.5 to 3 feet of snow covering parts of the Northeast. And as the snow was falling, I thought, well, I wonder if this guy even made it to New York City and whether this appointment is going to, happen. So I called to confirm, and sure enough, he was in New York, and sure enough, he wanted to meet. So there are some public transportation that I can take, a train or a bus or several trains and buses into New York. And I had no idea whether any of them would be running at all on Wednesday morning when I would have to go in for this meeting. I wondered whether I should cancel the meeting or not. So I prayed, and the thought came, no, you can get in. I will open the way for you. And I thought, well, God, how do you want me to get there? Train, bus, drive, what? And the thought came, no, be at peace. The bus will run. So I thought, okay, that means all the roads have to be cleared. So I got up Wednesday morning, went down to the bus stop, and sure enough, the bus was there. And sure enough, the path was clear. And it was probably the fastest trip I've had into New York City because there was no other traffic going in that morning. So I got in very easily, very smoothly, for which I was very grateful. Had a wonderful meeting and was able to get home in time for church that night. So I thank God for His guidance, for His clearing the way. And I thank Mary Baker Eddy and Christian Science for teaching me how to listen for God's voice and to obey it. It's great to be here tonight.
Thank you.